This is my 286 computer here that I've been working on. I'm still having very odd issues with it. If you saw my previous video, I couldn't get it to read the hard drive properly. If the file size was over 1K, it would just freeze up. You could copy stuff to it without any issue. Watch my previous video if you want some more background. So I decided to do some more troubleshooting. You can see here I have 3 different storage mediums. I have an IDE to compact flash adapter. So basically what this is you take a compact flash card like this 2 GB Kingston and it adapts it to IDE. And as you can see, this is a female connector, so it plugs straight into the IDE card on the motherboard, or the ISA slot. And you do need power just to power the card, but as you can see on this board, there are no chips whatsoever, and that's because compact flash is actually just IDE at its most basic form. Next up, we have an SD card adapter here. So this is the one I showed in the last video, and I've got this off eBay. It's very inexpensive, so it's an SD card. It has an ASIC on it and some components like a voltage regulator and a few other chips here. And this converts an SD card to an IDE, and this is obviously a male connector, so you can plug a cable into it to go there. Now, some people suggested on my last video that the problem was I was using an SD card that was too large for this computer. So here's a micro SD adapter, which I had in there, but this is one of the cards I was testing out. So you can see here, if this focuses, 256 megabytes. So clearly this is actually under the capacity of these old computers, because typically there was a 504 megabyte limit on hard drives with these old computers, and especially I've been trying to use DOS 6.22, which also has that 504 megabyte limit. This is a picture here of the BIOS screen on another computer where I did an auto detect with the 256 megabyte card, so I could see the exact cylinders and heads and all the various settings to put into the BIOS on the 286, just to make sure that I was using exactly the right settings. And then next up, we have this Maxter hard drive. I found this in my box of parts. This is obviously a very old hard drive. If you look here, manufactured in 1997. The capacity of this drive I think is 1.5 gigabytes. You can see here the cylinders, heads, and sectors is marked on the drive, along with a couple jumpers here, master slave, which I wrote again here. You can see this hard drive is larger than the 504 megabytes, but it is quite an old drive. So of these 3 things, you can guess which ones worked and which ones didn't work. This adapter did not work, and this is with a 2 gigabyte card in it. I could format it, I could copy files to it, but anytime I tried to read the data, it would just freeze up. This adapter with a 256 megabyte micro SD card also did not work. So even though I could program in the exact heads and cylinders to be 256 megabytes or whatever the actual capacity is, you saw it on that screenshot from the other computer, same exact symptoms as this. Now, one of the things that's different on this is this runs at 3.3 volts, and because an SD card is always 3.3 volts, and it looks like this particular adapter has a voltage regulator here, which converts the 5 volts down to 3.3 to run the card, and this ASIC, the IRQ14 line, which is transported right over the IDE cable back to the motherboard through the IDE cable, is actually running at 3.3 volts. And I saw that on my oscilloscope because I was probing around trying to figure out what was going on. But this adapter, on the other hand, if we take this card out, this card runs at 3.3 and 5 volts. And with this particular adapter, because there's no voltage regulator, it's actually running at 5 volts. So all of the signal lines coming out of this compact flash card are at 5 volts. So initially I thought that might be a problem that was causing this not to work. But both this and this don't work. Now, this old hard drive from 1997, guess what? This works. When I plug this into the computer, it absolutely works flawlessly. Yes, DOS can only see 504 megabytes, but there's absolutely no problem reading and writing and booting off this hard drive. So I've actually installed a bunch of games, and everything works perfectly. So I'm totally confused as to why I can use this hard drive missing a third of its capacity, so it's 1.5 gigs, I'm only getting 500 megs out of it, even though in the BIOS I did configure the heads and cylinders to be exactly as specified here, and the BIOS does show the size as correct. When I go to DOS, I'm only seeing 504 megabytes. But this, with 2 gigabytes, and I go to fdisk, it shows 504 megabytes. Does not work properly. I can format it, copy the files, like I said. Anytime I try to read it, I get the not ready error and the hard drive light just goes solid. And this 256 megabyte card, while it sees the capacity perfectly, I can format it, copy files to it as well. Anytime I try to read it, it gives the same exact not ready error as this. And in my previous video, you saw I was using a different hard drive, a slightly newer one. I think it was a 4 gigabyte or 5 gigabyte or whatever it was. It was probably 5 or 6 years newer. Also, same exact problem as these two, not ready errors. So I put out a question to people who also have 286 computers. Perhaps you have an IBM 5170. Are you able to use flash drives like this or like this on that computer using an IDE ISA adapter like I have? Or do you have to use specific old hard drives like this? Anyhow, that's where I am right now. I have a working 286 when I use this old hard drive, but if I try to use any other modern hard drive, I can't get it to work. And of course, this 20-year-old hard drive may not last forever, and when it breaks, I'm going to be left with a computer that has no bootable drive. I'm not really sure what to do. Thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you found any of this interesting. Give me a comment if you have any insight. Thanks very much. Bye. So this is IRQ14 actually being read directly off the ISA bus here. So I figured out that IRQ14, which is what the hard drive controller uses, actually goes directly to the hard drive. These are hard drive interrupts happening right now as I copy files onto the hard drive. If I go to C here, and we type edit, it works. It freaking works.